Hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of In the Gallery with Laura Ali. I'm your host, Laura Ali, and today we're going to finish up the second part of the closing arguments for Donna Adelson, and we are not going to hesitate. We're just going to get right into it.
Dan Markel's vehicle, a black Honda Accord with the tag number 534YBM. Information that the defendant had written in her 2014 planner. Wendy and Jeff Lacoste have their coffee date, at which she cancels their planned trip to California on July 11th through the 17th. She offers no real explanation for why she's canceling.
Also, why does she have his license plate written in her planner? I think that's incredibly odd.
It's up to say that she's real worried about being able to pick up the boys on the 8th.
Also, Donna could have behooved herself by just getting rid of her planners. She had all of her planners in her house when they executed the search warrant. I love a good planner. But when you commit a murder, get rid of your planners.
The 18th, of course, ends up being the day that Dan Markel is killed. Later that night, Jeff Lacoste goes to Wendy's, and she's a nervous wreck. She won't tell him what's wrong, but her stomach's upset, and he goes and gets her Pepto-Bismol. The killers are in town when that happens. The hitmen spend a day and a half following Dan Markel around Tallahassee. Here they are near the park there by his residence. They scope out his residence. And although Rivera had already purchased a murder weapon, a revolver that he got on the streets for the express purpose of killing Dan Markel, they lost him, or he was with the kids, or for whatever reason they did not get the job completed on the June trip. After the hitmen failed to get the job done, Charlie tells Donna on June 7th of 2014 that he's still working on Dad's birthday present, and she says, "I know you'll come through." Sometime around June 11th, Jeff Lacoste went over to Wendy's residence and observed her living room TV to have some impact damage. This was the same TV that Charlie got Wendy as a divorce present because it was cheaper than hiring a hitman. The location and damage to the set did not appear consistent with something the kids could have caused, at least to Jeff. Note that this is over a month before the murder that Jeff observes this damage, so
It's such a stupid... The TV was just such a stupid code word, excuse, alibi, the joke. The TV, stop saying TV, stop using TV. Don't have code words.
hung out there for a while. June 13th, the defendant has a note in her calendar to consider...
Really quick, the funny part to me is during the calls, like if you guys are familiar with the jail calls with Charlie and Donna, when Charlie's incarcerated but Donna's out, Charlie is like, with all that TV talk, they knew something was up. All that TV talk. It's like, you were talking TVs too. Don't try to act like they were just talking TVs and you weren't talking TVs. Everyone was talking TVs. Because it was the code.
Harvey's birthday party, if that's what he wants to do. Now, this is between the June and July trips, so there's a note to herself to talk to Harvey about whether or not he wants to cancel the party. Rob Adelson testified that there was no illness or anything going on in the family that he knew of that would potentially result in the canceling of Dad's party. This note may be contemplating that if the murder had happened on the June trip, that Harvey might decide it's not appropriate to go through with the party and we need to cancel these invitations. Wendy took a photo with Catherine McBanoa on the beach 2 days after that note to self in the planner. Here she is in front of the South Beach condo, pictured with Catherine McBanoa. That photo was taken June 5th.
Don't take a picture with your co-conspirators, especially if you have no reason to have had a relationship. Like, Charlie had a lot of girlfriends. How many of Charlie's girlfriends was Wendy really befriending? I would probably guess 0. Just because Wendy had her own friend groups and they would circulate through so quickly. It's like, I don't want to build a relationship with you and you're going to be gone in a month and a half. So,
For 2014. Wendy sends Rob a text with a picture of her and Jeff Lacoste. This is June 28th of 2014. She includes a request to her brother Rob not to tell her parents about her relationship with Jeff. This suggestion of a secret boyfriend later prompted Rob to suggest Jeff as a potential suspect to the FBI, a secret boyfriend. This was also a
And that part, right? When Wendy tells Rob, I have this boyfriend, but don't tell mom and dad. It's like weird because she wasn't one to talk to Rob about her relationships prior to. And why are you trying to frame Jeff Lacoste? Like, poor Jeff. Jeff would have gone down if Jeff would have left his house at the time when the killers were driving out, or driving in that direction, which is when he was supposed to leave. That poor man. They were trying to frame him.
Odd that she sent this because Wendy never talked to Rob about her boyfriends, and also because Jeff had already met her parents several times. June 30th of 2014, the defendant comes and gets Wendy and the boys from Tallahassee to take them down to Miami. Remember how she doesn't let Wendy drive with the boys to Miami. She rents a car and comes here and picks them up and drives them to Miami herself. And I think Harvey comes with her. And Wendy was to be in South Florida for 2 weeks. In the time between the June and the July trip, Charlie begins to put more pressure on Catherine Magbanua to get the murder done. On several occasions when he and Magbanua were discussing the murder, Charlie would step out of the room to call his mother and then return and advise her that the murder needed to get done as soon as possible because his parents were so stressed and worried about Wendy's situation. Charlie painted Dan Markel as an awful person to Catherine Magbanua. He was making Wendy's life hell. He was stressing out her parents. Katie knew somebody who could get this thing done, and he wanted it done. Magbanua understood that the murder was needed urgently to relieve the stress on Charlie's mother. July 1st, 2014, we have a single call from Garcia to Harvey Adelson. This call did not connect. It appears like it went to voicemail. And we would later learn from Magbanua that this was after an incident in which her two love interests, Charlie Adelson and Sigfredo Garcia, had a little bit of a run-in. Garcia was angry and jealous about Magbanua dating Charlie and tried to confront Charlie. After this attempted confrontation, it's believed that Garcia was trying to call Charlie, but ended up getting Harvey. And that was that one hang-up call, but it ended up being important because it showed up on the tower dump, Garcia's number, and then when we cross-referenced it with all the Adelson numbers, that was the first match that gave us Sigfredo Garcia's name. We would later learn that the real connection between the Adelsons and the killers was Catherine Magbanua and her relationship with Charlie Adelson. The text messages found in Charlie's iCloud corroborate what Magbanua says about the interactions and the call made the day before. So here she's saying, basically, Garcia's being ridiculous and childish. Harvey's birthday Evite goes out on July 3rd of 2014. The Evite addresses the boys by the last name Adelson. Their name was Markel. This is 2 weeks before the murder of Dan Markel, even though
the audacity. The audacity. Like, you know that that's the boy's name. You know this. And you send it as Adelson when you know. I'm going to play devil's advocate here, though. You know why? Because as a person that has sent Evites before, not always, though. I'm just going to say it. Sometimes you can have a family name. So, for instance, if Adelson's the name and Wendy was going as Adelson at that point because they were divorced, and then she had Ben and Lincoln attached to her, it could have just been that way, maybe. I'll let this one slide.
Evite says hosted by Donna, and the party was for Harvey. The defense has suggested that it was Harvey and not Donna that sent the Evites. The evidence showed otherwise. The court had told you there was some follow-up from Donna with the Evite people. She sent that email. A text is sent from Wendy's phone to Dan Markel.
Donna's face is like just incredulous. Like, she's just like, Georgia, you're so wrong, Georgia, but you're so right.
On July 6th of 2014. At the time this text was sent, the phone was present at the South Beach condo where the defendant lived. Dan Markel confirms, yes, I'm going to be in town to get murdered, not specifically, but he's asked, are you going to be in town July 14th or 18th? Those are the dates the killers were here. And this, despite the fact that the schedule for that week had already been decided way before this text. And Wendy was already scheduled to have the boys on that Wednesday, which is what she's asking about. She doesn't ask about the whole week that he's got the kids. She only asks about the 14th through the 18th. And I think the killers ended up going to Tallahassee on the 15th through the 18th. Obviously, Dan Markel was killed on the 18th. July 11th, 2014, the defendant comes back to Tallahassee to bring Wendy and the boys home. Okay, so bringing her home from the Harvey birthday party. That same day, both Harvey Adelson and the defendant separately, 8 minutes apart, email Wendy Adelson about her TV repair appointment that's going to happen on the day of the murder. July 13th, Wendy and Lacoste meet at Wendy's house, and she's an emotional wreck again for no apparent reason. Lacoste impeached her regarding some statements that she made during a discussion of their relationship that evening in the context of, you know, you got to get past this moving to Miami thing. I mean, you're not going to be able to move to Miami. And she says, you know, yeah, it's not an issue unless something happens to Dan. And she says, can I tell you something in confidence? And she makes the chilling statement at that time that her brother, besides joking about hiring a hitman because he was buying a TV because it was cheaper than hiring a hitman, he also, in fact, had looked into hiring a hitman to kill Dan Markel. This conversation occurred just 5 days before the murder. July 15th, Prius is rented. July 16th, Rivera and Garcia travel to Tallahassee. July 17th, Rivera...
Okay. Wendy couldn't help herself. I truly believe she couldn't help herself. I believe that Wendy, although she did it, I don't know if Wendy, she wasn't the strongest one out of the bunch, and she was the closest one to it. So it makes sense why you wouldn't want the father of your children to be murdered. But all of these things, Wendy's stomach, her stomach issues, her throwing up in the restaurant, her, you know, she just has like this word kind of vomit, like, oh yeah, like she can't help herself. And she's admitted that too. Like, she's not a good liar.
Garcia followed Dan Markel around Tallahassee. July 18th, murder day. You guys okay? Anybody need a break? Okay. July 18th, 8:11 a.m., the defendant texts Wendy about the TV repair appointment. The TV repair appointment was planned for between 8 a.m. and noon that day. And she says, they are on their way over now to help you with the TV sets in your living room. Hey, she didn't know which TV set it was. This is the TV that Charlie bought as a divorce present because it's cheaper than hiring a hitman. Could it be a coincidence that this TV is also the alibi for Wendy on the day of the murder? While he's being murdered by a hitman? And then, as we know, the defendant later uses TV as code when she's speaking on those wiretap calls. 8:20 a.m., Wendy texts Charlie, this is so sweet. We don't know what it means, but she she's texted in that and then she deleted it sometime between the time it was sent, 8:20 a.m., and the time that her phone was cell-brighted or downloaded at the police station later that day.
Why? So Donna tells her the TV repair people are on their way. She texts Charlie, this is so sweet, deletes the message before the Cellbrite extraction. Why, Wendy? Like, I'm looking at some of this evidence, like, mark this down for Wendy. Why, Wendy? There's going to be a lot of why Wendy's in her trial. Let's hope that it happens. Maybe we're starting fresh for 2026, okay? Maybe Ben and Lincoln are probably turning, I think they're turning like 17, 15, like, you know, they're 2 years apart, I believe. Okay. We're gonna, I think it's gonna be an 18 thing. That's my guess. I think when the kids turn 18, that's when they're gonna take Wendy down. Because I think them uprooting the kids to go live with Harvey, doubtful. I honestly don't think they're going to take Harvey down. Just a quick side note, I don't think they're going to take Harvey down. I think, although Harvey got spicy in the statements he got spicy. And I'm like, wait a minute, Harvey. Donna's over here acting like you're Mr. Frail. Not at all. You're as gangster as you want to be. Clearly. But I don't think they're going to take Harvey down. Reason being, I don't think they have enough on Harvey. Although I think Harvey knew, I just don't think you have enough on Harvey to take him down. Prove me wrong. But I think the checks is what got Donna. I think the wiretaps is what got Donna. And it seemed like they were hiding a lot of it from Harvey. Like Harvey may have known at some point, but they didn't want to worry him. Like he wasn't really in it. If they wanted to get him on a conspiracy charge, I'm sure they could. But I don't know if they want to waste the time and the tax dollars to try him on it, because I do think Harvey is a hard conviction. Wendy, on the other hand, I don't think is a hard conviction. Not when you hear all the evidence from Donna's trial. In Charlie's trial, I was like, I don't know, Wendy, I don't know. But then when you start going through the emails, the detailed emails between Donna and Wendy, and then even this information here, the text messages between Wendy and Donna, and Wendy and Charlie, Wendy knew. There's no doubt in my mind that Wendy knew, and I think a jury can come to that conclusion as well. I don't want to wait 3 years for this, truthfully. I don't. And truthfully, I don't think the Markells should have to wait 3 years for this. They're already in their 70s. Let them see Wendy go down. But thinking of the children, where would they go? They could go with Harvey, but I mean, yeah. That's my guess. All right.
9:04 a.m. Dan Markell leaves a voicemail for Wendy telling her he's headed to the gym and wants to know if it's okay for him to pick up the boys early and take them swimming that afternoon. Wendy says no, he cannot take the boys swimming after school that day. Meanwhile, what's going on across town? Prius is following Dan Markell into the gym parking lot. There it is at 9:16 a.m. 9:19 a.m. to 9:37 a.m.
Why did she tell him that repairmen were at her house? Huh. Wait, this text is interesting. Repairman at my house right now. I'm picking the boys at 3 p.m. So your swim idea is a no-go today. Huh. I don't understand why she would say that, but okay. Because it's very early. It's 9:12. What is the 3 o'clock? Well, you know the repairman's not going to be there all day. And if anything, you mentioning the repairman, if it was an extensive repair, that leads more to allowing Dan to pick up the boys, because you're going to be tied up with the repairman. That's a weird comment. It's almost like she's trying to state her alibi.
What's going on across town? Prius is following Dan Markell into the gym parking lot. There it is at 9:16 a.m. 9:19 a.m. to 9:37 a.m. Charlie and Wendy talk for 18 minutes. Wendy and Dan argue back and forth a bit about him wanting to take the boys swimming, but after getting off the phone with Charlie, Wendy concedes the argument with Dan and says, okay, you can pick him up and bring him back to me when you're done swimming. But of course the swimming plan didn't happen because Dan Markell was killed. 10:38 a.m. the Prius follows Mr. Markell out of the gym parking lot. 10:45 a.m. Mr. Markell shot twice in the head, in his vehicle, in his garage.
Yeah, no doubt in my mind that Wendy conceded to allowing Dan to pick up the boys because she knew he wouldn't be picking up the boys. I'm almost thinking about her doing the thing of break, like the divorce, and like sticking it to him. And I feel like in some way this is her sticking it to him. I mean, obviously she had him murdered, but like the comment of, oh yeah, you can have the boys. I don't know what it is. Something about it, though, is giving me like an icky feeling. The whole situation's icky, but specifically about this text message, because to me, it's reminiscent of her doing that same type of behavior of, I'm going to control your emotions in this way. I don't know, something about it just makes me feel uncomfortable.
10:51, the Prius is captured, fleeing the scene on a city bus camera. 11:01, Mr. Geiger calls 911. 11:15, law enforcement arrives at the scene and sets up a perimeter. Dan Markell is rushed to the hospital. He's treated, but the damage is catastrophic. It's not survivable. And he passes away about 14 hours later. 12:30.
Can we just acknowledge the strength of Dan to hold on for 14 hours after being shot in the head? Like, that is horrific, horrible, and he was fighting. He was fighting for his life. He fought hard to see his boys again. And that's what I'm trying to get at. It's like, Wendy is such an evil person. She knew the last thing she would have said to him is, yeah, you can pick up the boys. God, it's actually heartbreaking. The thought of it is making me very upset.
Now headed back south, turned their phones on. They had turned them off for the homicide. They turn them back on. The first phone call that either one of them makes is Fredo Garcia to Catherine Magbanowa. They want their money. Where is Magbanowa getting the money? From Charlie. 12:45. So while the killers are calling Magbanowa and heading south, Wendy goes out of her way to visit the crime scene, encounters a roadblock and crime scene tape. Per the officer at the roadblock, she would have been able to clearly see the police activity at her former residence. The residence where her children currently lived half the time and where they woke up that morning. Yet she abruptly turns around and leaves. She does not make contact with the officer to ask what's going on. She does not call the police to inquire. She does not call Dan Markell to say, are you okay? There's a bunch of cops at the house. She does not call the daycare to make sure her children arrive that morning and are okay.
Which is the craziest part. There's no way on earth that Wendy is driving past Trescott Lane, sees the police tape, and does not call Dan, does not text Dan, and does not check on her kids. There's just no way. And granted, she may have known the kids were dropped off already because she was communicating with Dan. You're still, if you had no idea what happened, you're still gonna say, "What? Are you okay? Like, are you okay? Even if I hate your guts, I'm sorry. You're the father of my children, and guess what? You're supposed to pick up my kids later. So, bare minimum, are you okay? Because there's a bunch of police at your house."
Instead, she proceeds to the ABC Liquors, purchases her bullet bourbon at 12:49. She's later approached by law enforcement at lunch and gives a law enforcement interview in which she says,
I will say that is a huge coincidence. I know that she was requested to bring the bullet bourbon, but I mean, come on. As Charlie said, it's coincidences. There's a bunch of coincidences.
"My parents have more reason to dislike Danny than almost anyone else." This echoes Rob Adelson's testimony that his mother hated Dan Markell at the time of his murder. And even from the periphery, it was known to Ryan Fitzpatrick as Charlie's friend. that his mother did not like Dan Markell. In her law enforcement interview, Wendy suggests her mother as someone who was very angry at Dan Markell. She suggests Charlie when asked if someone might do this on her behalf. She calls her mom, and the defense has put that call into evidence. 7:04 p.m., she tells her mom that there's been a shooting, and afterwards, Wendy expresses relief that they sounded surprised. 8:59, defendant arrives at Charlie's with the murder money.
Yeah, I kind of want to look into, believe it or not, I haven't really watched Wendy's interrogation. Maybe I watched it once, but I haven't really, I probably should watch that like a little more. But I do know that I do know that clip where she's just like, oh, they sound surprised, so that's a relief. And it's like, what? Like, if my ex-husband was shot, I would not even consider my parents. Like, that wouldn't even be a thought. And she's almost suggesting it.
How do we know she went there and that they aren't just old people that drive really slow? Well, there's a text message outside your house. I guess we're going to find out what that means, but I guess it's not going to be outside your house. And he says...
Really quick, this is also incredibly insane because Donna didn't testify, but in Charlie's trial, he testified that she wasn't outside of his house and he never saw her on the night of the murder to get the money. And it's like, so why is she texting outside of your house? Like, who says outside of your house and then you say 10 minutes out and then we're not meeting up? They think we're idiots.
Guess we're going to find out what that means, but apparently it doesn't mean I'll be there in 10 minutes to meet you there and get the money. About 10 o'clock, Catherine Magbanua joins Charlie at the house. Here they are making plans for that meeting. Next slide, please. Charlie answers the door with a gun in his hand. He's extremely amped up. He tells Magbanua, my parents just left. They both end up taking Xanax and sleeping over there for the night. The next morning, July 19th, 2014. So this is early morning hours, 1:25 a.m. I think we need the next slide. Yeah, 1:25 a.m. Donna and Harvey arrive at their Orlando hotel. In the morning, Charlie puts the money in Catherine Magbanua's trunk. She's seen at 9:33 a.m. approximately, heading south toward Rivera's house, where she's going to meet up ultimately with Rivera and Garcia and give them the money. Garcia takes the money out of the trunk where Charlie Adelson put it and divides it up between the three of them. Magbanua says she did not count her cut, but we know she put some of it in the bank, creating the largest monthly cash spike of any of the records we examined for her bank. This cash spike also occurs at a time when Magbanua was not employed. Rivera says his understanding was the job paid $100,000 total to be split between the three, and that the cut that he received was roughly a third of that at $35,000. We don't know the amount of Garcia's cut, but we know he got at least enough to buy a car and a motorcycle. All right, so July 20th, the defendant and Harvey Adelson take Wendy and the boys back to South Florida, 2 days after, not even 48 hours after Dan Markell is shot. They're gone. Relocation granted. On the way, Wendy receives a call from Detective...
Easy peasy lemon squeezy. And just like that. And truthfully, for the next year and a half, give or take, 2 years, they're living high on the hog. Up until the bump. They're kicked back. Donna's seeing the boys all the time. She has a nice little routine. She picks them up from school. She does the things. Wendy's working a lot, so she really has a lot of time with the boys. And it's so clear and evident how everything works out so smoothly, how they envisioned everything working out so smoothly for them after Dan's murder, but not realizing they committed a murder. So it's not going to be smooth because this murder is going to be solved. We want to know who killed Dan.
Isom. She tells him that call's breaking up, and she hangs up, afterwards referring him to her lawyer. Catherine Magbanua that day, for thereabouts, opens her Ziploc bag of money and finds a cash spike of any of the records we examined for her bank. This cash spike also occurs at a time when Magbanua was not employed. Rivera says his understanding was the job paid $100,000 total to be split between the three, and that the cut that he received was roughly a third of that at $35,000. We don't know the amount of Garcia's cut, but we know he got at least enough to buy a car and a motorcycle. All right, so July 20th, the defendant and Harvey Adelson take Wendy and the boys back to South Florida, 2 days after, not even 48 hours after Dan Markell is shot. They're gone. Relocation granted. On the way, Wendy receives a call from Detective Isom. She tells him that the call's breaking up, and she hangs up, afterwards referring him to her lawyer. Catherine Magbanua that day, or thereabouts, opens her Ziploc bag of money and finds her cut to be $100 bills stapled together in $1,000 stacks. How we know Charlie keeps his money. She also notes that her cut is damp and moldy. She mentions this to Charlie, and he tells her that his mother washed the money. Like laundered, like washed.
I 100% believe that. I could totally see Donna scrubbing that cash to get it clean so there's no prints. I could totally see that. And the Adelson staple right through it.
Adelson gets a call from Donna Adelson advising him not to talk to the FBI. What? Rob Adelson gets a call from this defendant advising him not to talk to the FBI. Just in case.
Why in the world not? Why can't he talk to the FBI, Donna? What kind of craziness is this? What if you had nothing to do with this? Why wouldn't you? You should want everyone talking to the FBI. Wouldn't you be concerned that your grandchildren's life could be in danger? Your daughter's life could be in danger potentially?
He says, well, I already did. She says, well, you don't know anything anyway, and hangs up. July 24th, 2014, Dan Markell was laid to rest in Canada. His children were not in attendance. August of 2014, the defendant registers the older child.
The amount of stuff they did after he died, and with the veracity and quickness in which they did it, is also what points directly to them. Why in the world would his children not attend his funeral? That is horrible. And I understand they may have done a memorial in Tallahassee. The children should be able to go to all of it. They're the children. And regardless of whatever issues you and him had, even if all of the things, if you were not involved in this murder and it was a horrific event, which it was, and you're not involved, any decent person could put those issues to the side and say, you know what? We had some good 4 or 5 years when the kids were born. And that's it. Let's do our thing together. Let me honor your life. And we can move on. But let my kids pay respect to their father.
Flag football under the last name Adelson. His name is Markell. This is 1 month after their father was killed. And already he's being erased from their lives. Within 1 year, their names would be legally changed to Adelson. (9/12 of 14). The defendant refers to the younger child by the last name Adelson. 9/17 of 14. The first check is written to Catherine Magbanua, signed by this defendant. This is the murder money. Even though Charlie has signing authority on this account, he could write these checks. He chooses to connect his elderly mother to a murder payment?
Why?
If she wasn't involved, there is no reason in the world why she would write these checks.
100%.
The defense said in opening that Charlie told Donna to write the checks because it was his business. But half of these checks were written after the business was sold back to Harvey on October 2nd, 2015. Regardless of who owned the business,
rule, members of the jury, you are relying on your memory of the evidence in this case. You may proceed.
Thank you, Judge. And regardless of who owned the business at the time, all the Adelsons had an interest in the Adelson Institute.
That's right.
All three of them had signing authority on that checkbook. But the defendant is the one that wrote that check. September 17, 2014, and the 43 checks that followed. Is that consistent with what we've heard? That she would just write the checks and not ask any questions? We've heard that she is assertive, she's controlling, she's a details person. She ran that business and those people's lives. She ran a tight ship. We've seen her weekly planners where she plans out every detail of her own life, making meticulous notes. She kept detailed information about Dan Markell and lots of other things. Rob Adelson testified that she's not the type of person who's just going to do something someone tells her to do. She's going to be asking questions. And we heard that Charlie testified that he told his mother about extortion. He says he was being extorted, right? All right, let's fast forward to October of 2015. Charlie's had a couple girlfriends since the murder and is now dating June Mchinda. Remember her? June, one of Charlie's girlfriends that testified, she said they were enjoying a fairy tale relationship in October of 15. During her relationship with Charlie, June observes that Charlie packages his money in an unusual way. $100 bills stapled into $1,000 stacks. June also observes the defendant to be in control of the family and super involved with the grandchildren. However, she found it odd that nobody in the family seemed curious about who killed Dan Markell, nor did they seem upset about the murder. Rob Adelson also noted a complete lack of curiosity on the part of his mother about this murder in the family. When he asked what the defendant thought happened to Danny, she said, quote, "I don't know and I don't care. It doesn't."
That is the most telling response. I don't know and I don't care. For someone like Donna, she would definitely know and care. She would definitely want to know and care about who murdered her son-in-law as a domestic coordinator.
Concern me. As someone who liked details and who always stayed on top of everything, her total lack of interest in who killed her former son-in-law, her grandchildren's father, is totally out of character. From July of 14 to April of 16, Donna Adelson got everything she wanted. Wendy and the kids were in South Florida where she could drop them off and pick them up, manage their schoolwork, their tennis, their piano lessons, and have her sunshines with her every day. All the while, she's steady paying for the murder of their father. Everyone is living their best life, thinking they've gotten away with murder until the bump. Everything changed on April 19, 2016, when the bump occurred. The undercover approaches Donna and hands her a piece of paper. The most human reaction in the world is to look at the paper. Uh-oh.
I love Georgia. Look at the paper. She feels because the screen is off. But correct. If someone hands you a piece of paper, literally, I don't care what it is, I'm looking at the paper. What is it? I need to read it. I need to see what's on it. She is direct eye contact. Well, she has her sunglasses on, but direct eye contact with the detective, the undercover detective. And she just takes the paper and puts it in her bag. I'm looking at the paper.
I think we got one more. There we go. The defense told you in opening that this defendant is a normal person just like you and me. There is nothing normal about the way she conducts herself in the minutes, hours, and days after the undercover approaches her with that paper. The bump and the wire were designed to expose the co-conspirators and their roles in this conspiracy, and it did. Here, we're just 10 minutes later. There's only one thing a normal person would do if approached on the street by a stranger who appears to be threatening harm to them in some way. A normal, or maybe I should say an innocent person would, 1, look at the paper. She didn't do that. 2, get to safety. Get help, contact law enforcement or your husband or somebody that's going to come help you. Get somewhere safe. What you would not do is lead the bad guy right to the grandchildren. The last thing a normal, innocent person would do is go get her little grandchildren and walk right back down the same block with them where this stranger just approached her. But that is exactly what she does. Then she gets on the phone with Charlie and says absolutely nothing about Dan Markel.
Mm-hmm.
There's pictures on the paper.
That's the most telling part. She says it involving the two of us or something like that. But she does not mention Dan at all. She doesn't mention Dan. She doesn't mention Wendy. He says, I want to say the undercover said Katie, but she never said Katie to Charlie. She said a girlfriend.
What she does say on the wire, which by the way is direct evidence,
Mm-hmm.
we don't like that, some direct evidence. When Charlie asked Donna on State's 99 call A, does it involve me or other people? Well, probably both of us.
Mm-hmm.
That is direct evidence. Anyone in that jury room wants to acquit her, make them tell you how that is not a confession. In call B, Charlie calls back because he can't stand it. And he asks his mother, will you send me a...
This is why the calls are so funny, the wiretap calls. Charlie literally cannot take it. He's like, I need to know what is happening. And he like keeps asking and she doesn't want to say it. But the fact that he keeps asking and the elusiveness, and then she brings up, well, this TV is about 5. TV.
Picture of the bump flyer. No, I don't want to do that. Well, why not? Why not? Normal, nice little old lady who knows nothing about this murder and has nothing to do with it. If Charlie's the one making you write the checks and Charlie's the one that knows something about it, send him a picture of it. He's asking for it. She doesn't want to do that. Why not? Call C, Charlie calls back to say, don't talk about things in the apartment. Oh, obviously. Obviously, we can't talk about things in the apartment. What's obvious? Is it obvious to you?
It's an obvious to you.
This TV was probably about 5.
Stop with the TV talk. They asked you for 5,000? He immediately decodes it. Watch.
He's the original code talker. This TV. And look what he says. They asked you for $5,000, he decodes it. He's not the one talking in code. He's decoding it and saying what he's picking up what she's putting down.
Mm-hmm.
There's no TV mentioned by the undercover operative that approached Donna Adelson on the street. A couple big takeaways for you, please. Innocent people do not talk in code. Second big takeaway, TV is code for the murder throughout this case. You got Charlie's joke, Wendy's chilling statement to Jeff Lacoste, the alibi of the TV, and now here we've got this TV again. A TV that's the alibi for Wendy. It sat broken for over a month so that a repairman could come out to be her alibi on the morning of the murder. An appointment that her parents set up for her, which was pointless because the TV was smashed and of course could not be repaired. Then she claimed she had an 18-minute phone call with Charlie about the fact that a smashed TV can't be fixed before she got in her car and went to the crime scene, where she did not get out of her car or make any phone calls or make any inquiries about what was going on at the house where her kids lived. Then Donna says that the undercover mentioned an ex-girlfriend. nearby, without knowing which ex-girlfriend, Charlie calls not his most recent ex-girlfriend, not the one before that. He only calls one, Catherine Magbanua, because that's the only one he did a murder with. Because he probably did have a general idea what his mother was talking about. When Charlie brings up going to the police, his mother says, that's not a good idea. Why not? Then instead of notifying the police, Charlie and the defendant leave the safety of her very secure building and meet at a marina just 300 yards from where she was approached by the undercover. They were observed speaking very intensely to each other in low tones. After that meeting, Charlie goes to Dolce Vita. This is the restaurant where he meets up with Catherine Magbanua, and we are able to capture some of that conversation that was had there. In that recording, we hear Charlie make statements that are not only incriminating, but that also are totally inconsistent with the defense that he would later offer at trial. Pause on the wiretap here for a moment just to go to what his defense was and what we've learned about that defense. I told you earlier that he said that Magbanua, Garcia, and Rivera acted alone. They just came to Tallahassee and killed Dan Markel, kind of in the hopes that they would get paid. There were several pieces of evidence that Charlie had to explain, and he designed a defense that he thought would do that. First, he had to explain that he's got this close connection between his girlfriend and the hitman. So the obvious defense there is, she heard me griping about Markel and she thought she was doing me a favor, so she did it on her own. Well, the problem with that is, normally you're not going to have your extortionist spend the night with you. You're not going to have the woman that has murdered your former brother-in-law spend the night.
Yeah, so I love how how Georgia fills in the jurors on Charlie's defense, because that gives more credence to the guilt. If she was your extortionist, which I still cannot understand. That's the only thing he could have went with, but I just don't understand how Charlie thought that was gonna work. Charlie, and then and I already covered the cross-examination of Charlie, but it's just so funny when he's like, well, she's not the extortionist. And it's like, you just said that she was the extortionist. And it's like, well, that's what I'm saying now. I didn't know that then. It's like, but she knew she was the extortionist. And he's like, yeah, but I didn't. And it's like, Charlie, just stop. So, anyway, I don't like Catherine using the N-word either. I don't know what that's about, but we'll leave that alone. Yeah. You're not going to be so buddy-buddy. He was very buddy-buddy with Catherine Magbanua after the murder. And you're not going to do that with your extortionist.
You're not going to inquire about her plans to go to the pool the next morning if she's, just murdered your ex-brother-in-law. So to explain these messages, he testified that he did not believe she was a part of it. She wasn't one of the extortionists. I was extorted by the killers. I had nothing to do with it. No one in my family had anything to do with it. But I thought that Magbanua was just a victim of the hitman too. She was a go-between for them. She was protecting him from them. All the money he and his mom were paying her, cash and checks, were going to the hitman, not for the benefit of Catherine Magbanua. Even the checks that were being deposited into her bank account, he said he believed she was taking out and giving the money to the killers. It was just funneling through her account so she could get insurance for her kids. So Charlie testified that he had previously mentioned to Magbanua the $1 million offer that his family was going to give Dan Markel, and from that she deduced, he's got a bunch of money. So she ran her mouth to her associates, and her associates took it upon themselves somehow to figure out who Dan Markel is and where he was and kill him on their own. Per Charlie, it was Katie alone that came to him on the night of the murder and demanded money on behalf of the hitman, with the threat that if he didn't pay, they would kill him or other members of his family. Since he didn't have that much money, Magbanua then negotiated a layaway plan with the hitman for him to pay her monthly to go toward this amount of money that the hitmen were demanding. He agreed. He opened up his safe, not at gunpoint or anything, and gave her all the money that was in there. And because she needed to show proof of employment to get insurance, that's why that money was funneling through her account. It was all for the extortionist. The problem for Charlie with that was that he had already agreed to put Magbanua on the payroll between the two trips. You see here in June, he hadn't done it yet, but he says no problem. Okay, so he'd already agreed to do it before she allegedly extorted him. Even though he had signing authority, it's this defendant that wrote those 44 checks. So if he's being extorted, why doesn't he write the checks? It's this extortion theory that we're saying that the defendant adopted when she heard Charlie's testimony and texted everyone she knew that what he just said on the witness stand was the truth. There's a concept in the law known as adoptive admissions. That's when one party makes a statement and the statement is adopted as the truth by another person. So when Charlie says in those first couple wire calls, if there's a threat, you go to the police, it's of interest that Donna doesn't say, what do you mean if there's a threat? We've been extorted for 2 years. There's been a threat for 2 years. Charlie did tell his best friend Ryan Fitzpatrick about the bump. So what I want to highlight here is the difference between their conduct during this alleged extortion that was going on for 2 years versus the way they act after the bump, which we know was a ruse, but was supposed to be like a blackmail effort. So Charlie tells Ryan Fitzpatrick about the bump. He also tells him about the confrontation with Garcia in the roadway on July 1st, 2014, but he never previously confided in Ryan Fitzpatrick about, even though it's his best friend, about being extorted for 2 years by this girlfriend of his or her associates. Ryan also noted a major change in Charlie's demeanor around the time of the bump. He was displaying a level of stress and anxiety that was not present before the bump, evidencing that his story about being extorted the whole time is false. June Mchinda noticed these changes in Charlie's behavior as well, but she also noted a major change in this defendant's demeanor after the bump. Although she didn't know about the bump, around this time she observed the defendant to be a mess. She had a swollen face, was crying, and said she was on painkillers for stress. On the balcony of the Icon, which I'm not sure this is the right balcony, but...
Yeah, I could imagine after that bump, the level of stress that the Adelsons were under was immense. Because, so they went from, okay, so they committed the murder in July of 2014. They went from 2015 living their best life. 2016 rolls around. They're coming up on the summer. Hey, let's partay. And then the bump happens. And at that point, it's like their guard in terms of, I think for the first 6 months or 3 to 6 months after the murder, they were very cautious. And I think that's also why they didn't start the checks to Catherine Magbanua until I think September or October of that year. They wanted to let things fizzle out. So I think once things fizzled out and they felt like the police weren't after them, let's get it going. Send the checks. Let's live. You want to go on a cruise. You need a car. You want to get your mother, take your mother here or there, whatever. Living it up. And then they also didn't know, I think they also didn't know Luis Rivera was locked up for another crime. Or maybe they did know, but it wasn't involving them. But it's when the bump happened. And then Sigfredo went down. And then Catherine went down. And it's like, you know it's coming. You know it's coming.
Some high rise, the defendant told June Mchinda she felt Danny was haunting her from the grave. Why would she make that statement unless she felt guilty about having wronged Dan Markell? So keeping that all in mind, let's see if the other evidence in the case makes sense with this Charlie version of events that this defendant has adopted. Starting with his statements to Catherine Magbanua at the Dolce Vita restaurant. Charlie says to Catherine Magbanua, if they had evidence, we'd have already gone to the airport. Even if they bugged your phone, you're still not talking about any of this. Like his mother, Charlie emphasizes that the co-conspirators should not talk about what they know on the phone. The cops would only bug your phone to get information about the murder, right? I mean, why are we not talking on the phone if we had nothing to do with it? Why are we not talking on the phone if we're being extorted and we're the victims here? Why are we not reporting it to the police if we're being extorted and we're the victims here? If the cops are listening, we're not reporting it to the cops because we're afraid they'll come kill us if we do that. Well, talk about it on the phone. If they're listening, they'll hear and they'll know you're being extorted, but they don't do that because it's bull. discussion about how he's going to start arming himself. So Charlie says at Dolce Vita, I'm going to start, I don't remember his words exactly, but he's going to start carrying a gun, and he's prepared to shoot. And he goes through a scenario where, you know, he might have to kill somebody in his driveway, and the cops will not ask any questions because he's a dentist. If he's been an extortion victim for 2 years, why is he just now starting to carry a gun? And then he says, if somebody comes up to me asking for money in my house, he's going to shoot them. This is the same guy that's been like too paralyzed by fear over the last 2 years to report his victimization to the police or to anyone. This is a guy of considerable resources that could, I don't know, get some muscle or some help or some something. Not just roll over and open his safe and give all his money to some girl that's not even armed. This is a tough guy that would never tolerate somebody coming up to him at his house and asking for money. But he's talking to the woman who supposedly did that exact thing, came into his house and asked him for money. He doesn't mention, well, I gave you the money, but I'm not giving this guy any money. You know, it's like they don't mention this extortion, so you see the problem. But this defendant doesn't see the problem. She says that that's the truth. The truth is out, thank goodness. The truth is out after we remained silent for so long. Defense does not have to prove anything, but through cross-examination and the witnesses they called, they chose to kind of suggest, you know, maybe Charlie was involved, maybe Wendy was involved. But there's no connection to our client. But Charlie's story was that he and his mom were involved in the sense that they were extorted by Catherine Magbanua, so they knew who did the killing. They just didn't speak up because they were scared, because they were being extorted. Donna Adelson calls Charlie's story the truth when it suits her to support her son and proclaim his innocence during his trial, but now she kind of wants to distance herself from that because it's a ridiculous story. It's not the truth. The truth wasn't out. Don't let her distance herself. She adopted that statement as the truth. She stuck with it.
Donna's face. She's like, say something about this. She stuck with it. She stuck with that story.
Extradition country, and she booked a ticket to one with a stop in another non-extradition country. She applies for a fast-track emergency visa for Vietnam. I wanted it the fastest I can get it. She indicates a 30-day visa is not sufficient. She requests for the longest visa, which is 90 days, which is past the bar mitzvah date. She tries to get Wendy to help with business assistance, and when Wendy doesn't respond, she ends up asking her friend Annie Cunningham, who y'all met in court. She says, I can't say exactly why, but we need you guys to come here, both of you. Wendy's not responding to us, and we have an issue that we cannot discuss over the phone. Why can't you discuss it over the phone? You're just going on vacation. Annie responds, basically, just say the word. When they leave for the airport, Harvey leaves this note dated 11/12/23 for Wendy regarding what is needed to sell some property, a gun. Donna makes notes in her planner to have Wendy have the lawyer tell Charlie where they are on the lawyer's private line.
Yeah, they're doing too many closing end items, like selling the gun, doing all the policies, all the trust funds. You don't do all that if you're going on vacation. You just don't. No one does that before they go on vacation. Like, maybe you might say, like, hey, just in case the plane goes down, the will is in the safe or something, but you're not doing all of this. So no.
So the call will not be recorded. Why not? Y'all are going on vacation. You're coming back. You're not fleeing. There's also a note in her planner to cancel disability insurance. That doesn't seem like something one does when they're going on vacation.
Mm-hmm.
There's a note, tell Wendy due October expenses, child support through mid-November 2025. They're presumably for Charlie's son planning to pay child support 2 years in advance. This is made in 23. All right, November 13th, 2023, the defendant is arrested trying to board a one-way flight to a non-extradition country. I mean, y'all decide if it's a vacation. This is a conspiracy. I mean, this took a lot of thought and effort. It's not a typical murder case. The defendant and her son set this up in a way that was designed to protect them. The main benefit of the structure of this conspiracy is that each party can insulate or distance themselves from each other. The primary risk of a conspiracy is that you're doing it with other people, right? You can get caught. Somebody can squeal. Somebody could give you up. And that's why the conspiracy is not shaped like this. Rather, they're not all huddled up together. they're going to be more like train cars. This is the way we see the communication flow throughout the course of the conspiracy. The best way to insulate yourself from your co-conspirators is to organize the conspiracy like a train car, with each car only communicating with the one in front and the one behind. That way, if someone gets caught or cooperates with law enforcement, they won't have enough information on you to give you up. And it's also very important to position yourself within the conspiracy such that those that have the most information on you are those most loyal to you. And that is exactly what Donna Adelson did. To be guilty of conspiracy, it's not necessary for the defendant to say any particular word or do any particular act. But in this case, she did do that. We have all those words and acts that we went over that directly tie her. They are direct evidence tying her to this conspiracy, plus all the powdered sugar dust. Don't let the way she thought she was going to get away with this be the way she gets away with it. Render a verdict that does justice. Find her guilty. Thank you.
Freaking Donna. I'm saying Donna, Georgia. Don't let the way she thought she was going to get away with this be the way she gets away with this. Don't do it. And they didn't. They didn't, I will say, right? They didn't. Really quick, I'll just do a quick little, let me just see if I could just pull up Donna verdict. I know you guys have seen it already, but it's just a good little, we all love the good little chuckle of the verdict, right? Hold on, let's see if I could just fast forward to it really quick. We're going to jump ahead.
Having reviewed the verdict form, it is in its proper order. At this time, I will publish the verdict.
I'm sorry.
We, the jury, find as follows as the count one of the indictment, first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder. Mrs. Adelson, control yourself.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
Count two. We, the jury, find as follows as the count two of the indictment, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Count three. We, the jury, find as follows as the count three of the indictment, solicitation to commit first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of solicitation to commit first-degree murder. And it is signed and dated by the foreperson. 1 moment. Members of the jury, the bailiff will escort you to the jury room.
Donna, get yourself together. Judge Everett's had enough of her. Oh my goodness. Donna, her poor handler there is just like, are we done yet? Like, is this going to be over? But anyway, I just wanted to end with that. All right, thanks guys for rocking with me on this. I'm not done with Adelson. I'm a little bit obsessed with Adelson, so I may do more Adelson. I don't know what yet, but we'll see. Hope you guys have a good one, and thanks so much for joining. Talk to you soon. Bye.